Okay, so we're getting the session recorded. There is quiet, waiting, anticipating. Hello.
Hi, this is Daniel.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. We have some lovely weather here, so I'm just back
Yeah,
from a long bike ride.
yeah, us too. It's really been nice.
Yeah, well, so I have a text that I can send you now um, of what I was proposing to say. Oh, here I can. How many other people are here already? I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I think people are gonna come on around 7. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, Tiffany's there, and you're and me. Um,
Okay.
so can you make me the presenter Okay, let me see. How do we do that? How do we make Tiffany the presenter? How do I change presenters? I'm going to try. Let
All
me
right.
see. But you wanted to text me something or email me? Because if you
I
email
can.
me, I can put it on the screen so everybody can see. But if you text me, I don't know what to do.
Oh yeah, I'll email it to you right
All
now.
right, thank you. Uh,
Um,
how does this presenter thing work? Make someone the presenter. Uh, how do I make Marina is there? How do I make people? Geez, I wish I knew what I was doing here. Um,
Hello?
Marina, hi, how you doing?
This is Tiffany.
Oh, Tiffany, how you doing? Sorry. How do I make you the presenter? I would like to do that, but I'm not sure I don't know how to do that. Let me see.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
There you are. There you
Hi,
are.
hi, this is
I know there
Eva
is a way.
Kahana. I'm
I know
just on
there
the
is a way,
telephone.
but I just shoot audio view. Okay, audience view, attendees, chat. It should be very easy to do that, and I think it is very easy to do that. But let me see, webcam. Oh, that's nothing. Screen. Change presenter to friend. What does that mean? Change presenter to friend?
I know you come up as the friend organizing this session.
Yeah, but if I'm clicking on change, oh, there it is. It says Tiffany. Okay, verify, make Tiffany the presenter. Yes. So now you're the presenter.
Oh, okay. What do you want me to present?
Oh, I don't know. It just the message from you was make me a presenter. Were you
No,
aware of that?
no, I was not aware of that. It showed you as my friend.
That's so funny. Because now I don't know what the heck is going on with this screen.
Oh,
Oh,
dear.
Congratulations on your Cinesure. I hope it comes with a big fat paycheck or something as presenter.
oh, not leave meeting. We don't want to leave meeting. Let me see. Change presenter to me. Okay. Show my screen.
Friend, it says now friend is the new presenter, so that's you.
Yeah, that's
That's
me.
you, Stefan, because I keep calling you friend.
Okay. No problem. No problem. If you guys want to put on, we have 6. If you want to put on your video, we can kind of see each other. And I apologize again for Monday. I'm just hey Daniel, how you doing? Very frustrating. And unfortunately a couple of people, I think Fred was with us, but today he can't. I think Kaylin was with us Monday. I think other people said they would be here, Ava Kahana, and
I'm here by phone. I can only
okay,
stay for a short time, but I'm
okay,
on the phone line.
all right. And Harville said that he can make it. So Cecilia said she could make it. Ignacia said she can make it for a little while. So we're going to wait maybe a couple of more minutes. What I wanted to actually start the conversation with, Daniel, did you want to send me something, or did you send me something, or how do you want to do that?
I just did send you something.
You did?
I'm not sure that it may be something that people want to read or you want to read, and we can decide what to do with it. I wouldn't suggest that we try to incorporate it into this meeting.
Into the meeting.
I think we may have enough on
Okay. Okay. Let's. What I wanted to do is kind of start the conversation, and of course, it would be great if really everybody was here. But um, how is it going? And I know that everybody's busy, you know, except for me. It's not that I'm not busy, but this is all I'm busy with. Um, how has it been kind of thinking about love? You know, having that be, you know, the symposium is coming up and then there's questions kind of being sent back and forth. How has it been thinking about love and even trying to hopefully define what love is? Has that been coming up for people in some ways?
Well, one interesting thing that I observed is that whenever I send somebody an email explaining that I will be in New York or even trying to invite them to attend a conference, that I get back some kind of a funny comment or a smiley face. Like it's not like in a normal situation that you're talking about a scientific meeting, people don't just automatically send either funny comments or smiley faces. So it seems that the whole idea of a conference in love kind of elicits some kind of emotional and positive emotional response in people.
Yeah. I mean that's interesting, and of course we've been sending out things, and a lot of people open it, and a lot of people click, but we just haven't had. And I'm wondering, you know, the kind of I would have thought based on talking to so many people over this past year that uh, and 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 the interest, but I'm wondering, and now you're saying smile. I'm just wondering how serious
Hmm.
people are taking this effort, whether maybe they think it's really not possible, or maybe they think this is very cute.
Yes,
And
that's the response I'm getting.
yeah, out of, you know, and one of the things we talked about actually doing is getting 10 to 15 people together around the table and discussing this, you know, audience, no audience. So, but yeah, I don't know if people know where to kind of put it, you know, what to do with it, and that's okay. You know, but yeah, that's also the sense that I'm getting, that they're not quite sure what we're talking about when we're talking about a symposium on love. So much for starting something, you know. Uh, um, it
Well, you know, it reminds me, I think you and I talked about this, Stefan, about the Golden Fleece Award, you know, that
mhm,
Senator
yes.
Proxmire from Wisconsin gave for this, rejecting this love study because he says we know everything we need to know about love.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
that was a bit of a, you know, similar response. It's sort of like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, well, what is this about?
mhm, mhm,
But everybody I ask, you know, because you know I've kind of been going out there and just surveying people. Everyone has a different definition.
mhm.
It's so funny, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
As recently as a few minutes ago, someone said it's all chemistry and stupidity.
yeah, yeah. You know, and it's actually one reason why we don't have a science. And I don't believe we have a science. And I don't think that until we get to a place where we have a science, that we're actually going to be able to help the average person. I think people are going to walk around with things like that. It's stupidity, it's mystery, it's all of these kinds of things. Uh, and it's just something we haven't been able to answer. We have not been able to answer, but I think we're getting closer and closer to answering. And one of the things that I you know, has come up is that when you have a community like this, and I want you to know that be, beyond us, there are really a lot of people who have expressed a lot of interest and are following, and they want to know what's going to come of it. And I can't tell you how many people said, when is the next one? Because we were a little bit late in terms of setting the date and then even letting people know about it. So that's okay, because I think for a first conversation, I think not having a million voices is probably a plus. You know, we're
Mhm.
trying to deal with 10 plus voices, 15 voices, 18 voices, and it's you know, it's a challenge. I think it's a challenge. I want to acknowledge all of you, you know, for dipping your toe in the water and saying, okay, you know, I think I can tolerate, you know, the temperature here. One of the things that another response that I wanted to share with you is that I think what people seem to be implying is that when a community like ours, if we can kind of get behind a concept, so to speak, or even a couple of concepts, that we are in a much better position to, let's say, do some research around the effectiveness of that concept, or to test 2 or 3 different concepts and actually see what people are responding to. You know, when we can do biological markers and we can do a number of different things, cortisol and oxytocin, but when we come at it one at a time, it's a little bit more difficult. And Tiffany, so this is what you were kind of talking about in terms of the foundation and research dollars. I think if we speak in and we go as a community to, let's say, Templeton, you know, Agnieszka had, I think they had a 2-year grant to work on, and I don't want to misspeak what the words are, but they still have the website up. I think it had something to do with either altruistic love or something like that, but something about love. So this company, Templeton Foundation, is looking to support work, and they founded a couple of major conferences, but I think that they were a little bit more limited than ours, even though it was a lot more people than ours. But I think the scope was somewhat more limited than ours. I think if we go to them together and express this conversation we're having and where we're going with it, and how far we've come, and that we want to go further, and we really want to test some of the hypotheses or things like that we have, I think that we'll do well in terms of getting some foundation or corporate support even, etc.
I know that Stephen Post is very involved with the Templeton Foundation, but
yes,
but I understand they do want formal proposals.
Yeah. Well, this is something, you know, that hopefully when we finish this next Sunday, that we'll sit down, a small team at least will sit down, and we'll draft, you know, we'll begin to draft a proposal that includes what we've done, how far we've come, what we think we could use some money for, and how we're proposing to kind of use that money, and then also look around and see where a research you know, would find home, you know, in possibly in a university or someplace. So yeah.
Could you, I'm sorry if this is sidetracking things, but
No,
when we
it's
talked
okay.
on Monday, I think some of us were not entirely clear, or maybe you can do that later in an email to just kind of tell us the logistics of where we are meeting, if we're meeting on Saturday, and
Yes.
just sort of a little lack of clarity about, we once spoke about a one-page write-up, then we talked about the 10-minute talks. Would you like PowerPoints or just general presentations? Just clarifying the logistics a little bit.
Let me start it now, because at least the people who are here now will have that, and it actually some of it just really finalized today. So it turns out that the Bohemian Hall, when we started to talk to them about the symposium, they have a restaurant and they have a kitchen, but it wasn't in operation. Whoever was operating it, whatever was going on, wasn't in operation. So we had to start looking around, where would we have the dinner, and et cetera, et cetera. So since then, it has come online, and they have a delicious menu, and it's right there in the same building. So when we go there on Saturday, We will also, at the same time, you know, kind of discover where we have to go on Sunday. It's not two different places, so I think that will make life a little bit easier. So dinner from 6 to 10 at the Bohemian Hall, and at the same time that we're doing the dinner, we're also going to be doing kind of right next to where we're going to be sitting. There is an alcove, separate alcove. We're going to be asking everyone two simple questions. What made you participate in this symposium, and what are your expectations? So that is going to be like maybe 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, just two simple questions with two answers, and you guys will think about this because you know it's going to go on video. So each person will be interviewed while we're eating and socializing and talking and stuff like that. So dinner Saturday 6 to 10. I might even ask some people if they can to come a little early, like maybe Joseph or Harville and Helen and stuff like that. This way, if we can start maybe at 5 o'clock to do the video, we won't have to do that much during the dinner. So so that's set. And then you were asking about Sunday, so Sunday oh, here's the good news, and not to sidetrack, but it has to do with the symposium. It's going to be a live feed. We're going to be streaming worldwide.
Nice.
So anybody who's interested in love can listen in on our process, and and we'll make it clear because people have to register in order to get their code. But now you can tell anybody and everybody. You can tell people if you can't come. Of course, it would be better if you could come and join us and kind of give us feedback, because the live streaming, they can give us feedback. They can listen in, but it's not going to be feedback. But so this is very exciting, very, very exciting. Harville did it in Dallas. They're trying to get all of Dallas to communicate, teach them how to communicate, and it's going very well. And he said, we should be live streaming this. So we started to look into it, and we got a couple of people to give us a very fair price that we can live with, and so we're live streaming. So make sure you let everybody know that you're participating and that they can participate, because I think that the more people realize there is a conversation going on beyond its stupidity, then they will start thinking about it in a more serious way. And that's what we want. We want us, and we want people out there to begin to really think about this in a more serious way. I think there's a lot of science that's coming down the pike that I think will help us answer some of the questions that we're talking about. Ava, did I answer all the questions that you asked? I probably left something out.
Well, I just wanted to sort of reiterate what. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to check what we should be sending in other than our answers to those latest questions. Like, do we still have the one page of our
the one page is the one page is for Cecilia. She just wants to look at it because we're still deciding who is going to be presenting in the morning, some kind of flow, and then who's going to be presenting in the afternoon. So if we don't see that one page, it's kind of hard to put it together so that there is some kind of flow instead of kind of back and forth. And PowerPoint is okay, up to 10 minutes, but if we can keep it to 5 to 7 minutes, then we have actually more time for discussion. So part of the reason of keeping it succinct and short is so that we can actually spend more time questioning the presenter and thinking about, what we heard.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If somebody is PowerPoint, then they will need to bring it on a what do you call those devices?
Jump Live.
I'm sorry?
Jump Live.
Yeah, a thumb, whatever it's called. A drive, a small thumb drive.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, then you just have to make sure that you bring it with you and that it works. So that when we give it to the audio visual people, you know, they can plug it into their computer. All right, I thought where we would start, and if you can see my screen, I'm going to like read it. Can everybody read my screen on your screen? What I have up is starting with Marina. So what we did up till now is basically what I would call the intellectual part of, like, what is your definition of love? And so you know, we had to go to our head and we had to kind of think about it and that kind of stuff, you know, which we're very apt to do. We're very good at doing, you know, thinking about things and creating concepts and stuff like that. So to me, that's kind of at the one end of the spectrum of this definition that we're searching for. I believe that the other end of the spectrum is something that we have in common with the person on the street. You know, if we asked them what love is, they couldn't go into, you know, a 3-page philosophical discussion about what it is. So we really don't have that in common with them. And if we put that out to them, they wouldn't understand really what we're talking about, and it wouldn't be very useful for them. On the other hand, if we think about ourselves individually as the man on the street, because we are, you know, when we're not the philosophers and sociologists and psychologists and doctors with all that knowledge, we're the person on the street. You know, we have relationships like they have, and we have problems in the relationships like they have, and we have parents and siblings like they have. And so I thought that if we begin to think about, at the same time that we philosophize, if we start thinking about our experience as individuals, our experience, because there are a lot of people out there, philosophers and psychologists and people, who believe that our experience is the most authentic thing that we can look at. So you know, there is a reality to the experience. If you stick your hand in something and it's hot, that's real. You know, and we have that real experience, and I wanted us to begin to think about our experience as people and not discount it because it's not a philosophical attempt. It's just very basic. So let me go through this in terms of the responses, and then we can talk about it. So basic questions, asked a series of basic questions. So Marina added, what blocks love? So that's something for us to think about. What blocks love, or what blocks the stream of love? And second question, why is it impossible for me to love while my heart is crying for it? So we have this sense like we want to love, and then it seems to be that there's an impossibility. It doesn't seem that it comes easy or at all. And then the third thing, she says, how can I start loving again? Okay, and then to the questions, those 5 or 6 questions I set out, to all the questions I answer yes. So do we need love? Do we want love? Can we withhold love? Can we give love? You know, those questions that were sent out, her answer to all of those is yes. Tiffany, what physical feelings do people have with love? So how do we physically experience love? And 2, what can happen to people when they don't find love or they don't have love? So those 2 questions came in from Tiffany. From Jean Watson, what is the highest level of consciousness? And she also added, I think we have enough history about human infant thriving to validate we all need love to survive and flourish. Indeed, at some deep common level, it is known among indigenous cultures and healers around the world that love is the greatest source of all healing. And then the question, she said, how do we sustain, teach, live, practice self-love and offer love to other human beings on the planet? Which is really what we're trying to actually answer by answering what is love, because once we know that, we will know how to sustain it, how to teach it, how to live it, practice it with ourselves and others, how to give it. Fred.
Thank you for letting me join. I have to go to another meeting, but I jumped in. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ava, take care. All right, so Fred. Is love important to most people? From what I can see, romantic love is important to almost all. Familial love is important to most as well. What is less important is the love that pushes human beings to become more generous, kind, and compassionate. Do most people want love? Most want to get love. Some want to give love. Do most people need love? It certainly seems that way. And they have distorted ways to ask for love and to react when love is not forthcoming. Can most people sense, feel when others are loving? I think so, even though our woundedness and issues obscure much of what we experience and cause us to see through distorted lenses. This should be can instead of can't. Can most people sense, feel when others are not loving? Same answer as above. To some degree, yes. More often, not so much. The five love languages get at this. One person's way of receiving love is different from another's, and often we do not see the love behind the language we are not attuned to. So, we give love differently. Can most people give love to a greater and lesser degree? Yes. Can most people withhold love? One of the great abilities of human beings, we withhold love 99.9% of the planet on a daily basis. So he certainly feels like we do. Joseph Lau. Also, I think love is important to everyone, whether they think so or not. I believe everybody wants love, whether they realize it or not. Love is critically important to normal development. If we do get it, especially during infancy, childhood, developmental disorders related to attachment are likely to occur. I think most people can sense when others are loving or not loving. Most people can give love in their own way, though not always overtly. I believe everybody can withhold love and probably do to some extent, especially from strangers, partly for self-defense. Most basic questions for me are, what is love, and how can love most effectively be nurtured? And then he suggests Robert Sternberg's triarchy theory of love. Agnieszka is going to be with us a little later. As for your question, I would answer yes to all of them. We need it, we want it, we can withhold it, we can give it. But the issue I see is that the answers do not pick out love uniquely. The same would be true of other interpersonal goods that may not qualify as equivalent to love. For example, kindness, appreciation, empathy. So this is one of the things we need to talk about. That is love an umbrella term like food, or is love a word? And appreciation stands for something different than love, and empathy and compassion. So this is, this is something we'll have to talk about because we all know we need food. And it doesn't matter if you call it dairy or meat or grain. And thousands of years ago, we just called it all food if it didn't kill us. And now we become a lot more sophisticated, but it's still food. So since we're more sophisticated and we have all of these words, do they stand for something different? Or, again, Stephen Post said, love is the hub, and then all of these are the spokes. So it's another way of kind of presenting the idea. As for all the questions, the answer will still be yes for all of them. May well specify several necessary conditions. I had a long conversation about necessary and sufficient that Daniel, you probably can relate to those things, necessary and sufficient, which is something that we might have to take into consideration ultimately. Ava, the question raised, second exercise is interesting but can only be answered based on empirical study. So that's one reason that we want to see if we can come with a unified voice so that we can get research money and then take a look at some of the things we're talking about. Is it hard to offer opinions about how most people feel about needing, giving, or appraising love? Nevertheless, based on universal importance of love, one could opine in the affirmative to all of the questions you raise. Eva Sella, she wrote lengthier, and she apologized because I don't think she could make it today. Is love important to most people? Do most people want love? I think love is important to everyone. Of course, if you are defining love as romantic love or being in love by another person, then no, that sort of love isn't sought after by everyone. But I do believe that for every human being, there is a deep desire, conscious or unconscious, need to feel loved, admired, adored. Thus, why many people seek out fame and fortune, something that helps one feel valued. And a lot of these people kill themselves, so we have to wonder about admired and adored, whether it really makes people feel loved. Do most people need love? To that effect, I do not think. Needs love, again, not necessarily the love that comes from another human being, but receiving love in the form of adoration from others, pets, or from God, another type of spiritual belief where one knows one is connected and loved. Can most people sense, feel, when others are loving? If all human beings were attuned to their senses. So now we're talking about the necessity of attunement, of being aware of what we feel and sense. They would be able to feel, sense when others are loving. We are designed to recognize vibrations through our senses and can sense when someone is loving versus not. Most people are not attuned to their senses, though, and our minds often get in the way of being able to be connected to what we feel. So that's something we're aware of in different psychotherapeutic modalities. Can most people sense, feel when others are not loving? As above, we all have the capability of sensing. The problem arises with our own fears, triggers, distortions that cause us to want something from others that then leads to misreading what we feel and what is being transmitted. But with some fine-tuning, we all have the capacity to feel when one is loving versus not loving. So we can feel when we are getting love and not getting love. How we translate... Hello?
Hello? Hi,
Yes.
Stefan. It's Cecilia. Sorry I'm late. I kind of lost track of time.
It's okay. It's all right. Not a problem. Stick with us. We're going through the definitions. I think I sent this out to everybody. So everybody, you have it. If you can go back and you can kind of look at some of this. Can most people give love? Everyone has the capacity, but the ability to give love is dependent on many other things like trauma, brain functioning, pathology, history, receiving love. So I don't think that the question is what kind of trauma. We're trying to answer what is love, irregardless of where people are and their ability to give it or not give it. We want to know, is it possible to give? And if we can say that the answer to that is yes, then we answered it's possible to give, it's possible to receive. But our focal point, I just want to make sure that we're clear about this, because we can come up with all kinds of good reasons, why and how and the exceptions and everything. But yeah, we need to see if we can answer what love is, and then all of these things are really different questions and different. Can most people withhold love? We can choose to withhold love when we're in a negative state. Oxytocin levels drop when the fear stress response is activated. So here is, she's someone who's written the book, The Love Response, and so one of the things that we need to really consider is integrating the science with our experience to kind of explain our experience and philosophy and the philosophy. Do these questions qualify as basic? Are there other basic questions we need to take into consideration? I think these questions are good, but really general, which is really the point. And I would think it might make sense to discuss how to access love when we're in a stress, fear, or triggered. So that's really a yes and a no. That's like the next question. We have to be really focused on something that is much more difficult, I think, in a way to answer than some of these other things, because we want to help people understand what love is, and then we can explain to them why stress or fear or etc. why these things are blocking it. How to move beyond our programming to be able to be attuned to what we're feeling, to then shift the dynamics. What is the difference between different types of love, or are there different types of love? And what is healthy love? Once we have our group of basic questions and answered them to our satisfaction, we can move to the next phase, which I would agree with the why and how. And we're starting with the what. So any thoughts about this? And like I said, you know, you all got it. So we can go back, and I'm going to encourage everybody to look at the first set of definitions and look at, you know, these questions. So anybody have any thoughts?
Well, I have some. This is Tiffany. I have some thoughts from just reviewing the literature, and what I called up was romantic love, because when I called up love, I got maybe 10,000 entries, and it was things like "I love Lucy" and you know, things that really didn't relate to what we're talking about. So I pulled up romantic love, and I only found like 149 entries. Most of them were fMRIs, and I think, you know, that started, I guess, with Helen Fisher and her colleagues, and that research has really taken off. But what I see missing from the literature is, well, first of all, there are, you know, that standard paradigm of looking at the photo of a loved one versus a familiar, unfamiliar person, which is a little bit contrived, because it doesn't really, I mean, I guess it does pull out feelings, but you don't really see what's going on in the relationship. So like when I see you, Stefan, relating to your wife, you know, I can feel that there's love. That people haven't been looking very carefully at the relationships between people who have very persistent or long time love. Most of the studies in the literature are on, you know, recent romances of you know, a couple months duration or something, and a lot of them don't last. And then they compare the ones who do last to the ones who don't on those photos. But people aren't really looking at what happens in real love relationships. And so I think that's something that I would like to focus on, is, you know, that's the limitation of the literature we have so far, and that's someplace we need to go.
Yes. So yeah, and so, for instance, things like that that haven't been explored. Bringing back to what I was saying before, as a community, bringing this issue forth, we will have people listen, literally listen, versus you know, the voice, you know, in the wilderness, kind of crying out for things. So I think we've gotten a lot of credit. So, and I always want to share it with you for actually having formed this community. And then people are saying, well, I hope it's not going to end, you know, at the time of the symposium. And I'm saying, I hope so too. I hope we continue, because I think there's a lot of work ahead. And I think the benefits, I think, are literally enormous. Enormous benefits if we stay the course. And I believe we're going to get the research dollars that we need, and it's you know, it's going to be very satisfying to have answers, you know, to some of these things. Anybody else want to say something about some of these basic questions? Your basic.
Hi, this is Isabel.
Yes, Isabel.
So let me see if I do the camera so you can see me. Yes, there I am. So I want to make some comments, because I think what Tiffany says is very interesting. And I noticed that Stefan also, I think it was you that put something about observation without theory is blind. And that's one of the things that brought me here. Just because when I've been looking into the literature, and I always look into the literature to see how natural things can help my patients, and I found a lot of research with oxytocin. Oxytocin being brought up as a way to regenerate tissue, to accelerate wound healing, besides that it helps kids to grow. So it not only helps kids to grow, and it's essential for their growth, but it's also essential for human thriving, for human healing. And if we can find out more about love, and if we can teach the public how to generate love, we can probably help them a lot with a lot of issues that are affecting our health today. So I do think that is very important, because when we look into the literature, when I look oxytocin research, they're looking at giving people drops of oxytocin or oxytocin intranasally. You know how we are, doctors. We're looking to give pills or produce a pharmaceutical component, but we also see that when people has grown, has been raised in a loving environment, they respond to oxytocin differently than people who has been raised in an environment that they didn't have love. Even kids, when they're in an environment that they don't receive enough love, they don't grow, they try to give them growth hormone and they don't respond, and then they give them a little oxytocin and they are responding. But when you move them to another environment where they receive love is when they really show improvements. So all those observations I feel are very interesting, but because we're not looking into love and oxytocin together, we haven't put that together. That's something that it doesn't allow us to understand that as a community, given sociology or medical or philosophy, it doesn't matter, but just as a society, we need to understand love better and use it, because it's very important for human thriving. And I think it could potentiate us, it could bring us to our optimal performance in many ways, in the way that we educate our kids, in the way that we raise our children, in the way that we perform in our professions. So that's why I think it's so important, and that's why when I think about love, I really think that it's essential and it's nourishing, because it's essential for thriving, it's essential for growing. So, and I think this symposium is going to bring that. It's going to allow us to bring the theory, so then we can understand those research better, and we can potentially more research and giving us conclusions that we can utilize in real life. That's it.
Good.
I think your point about oxytocin is really there in the literature. There's a lot of literature on oxytocin and love, and starting with the prairie vole all the way up to the human. And I saw an interesting study where they showed that couples who are having conflict and not getting along have different oxytocin levels. And the ones who get along have similar oxytocin levels. So you're right. You could give, that's one potential therapy. You could give intranasal oxytocin to couples that have unequal oxytocin levels. And to look at oxytocin together with behavior would be really interesting. It would be very feasible and cost effective.
There you go. That's the
but it would be very interesting. Right, it would be very interesting to understand, because as I say, no, everybody responds the same unless they really live in a loving environment. And that's one of the things that I've been trying. I start this seeking meeting Eva Selhop and I started doing some exercise about loving myself, because I thought if I can teach my patients to be independent and self-sufficient in love, then that can be something really important for them, because they can heal themselves, or they can prevent problems, and they can manage stress better. So that's how I kind of got started. And with meditation, you increase oxytocin and vasopressin. And when you exercise, you increase if you don't overtrain, you increase, oxytocin and vasopressin and the way that you breathe and different things. So I do think that as I understand that oxytocin is a great agent, we need to understand, and the public need to understand, that the best way to utilize, or the best way to get oxytocin is not in a bottle. It's from loving. It's from giving and receiving and generating love within yourself. So loving yourself, loving your family, loving people, getting love, responding to love, like accepting love in the right way. So that's why I think this symposium is so important. And when Stefan say this needs to bring clarity to the public, is because when you understand that love is as essential, as Stefan say, as food, air, and water, then you really understand that you need it and you start working on it. If you don't understand for that is essential thriving and for your survival, then you don't work the same. You don't look for it. You don't put it as one of your priorities. You know your priorities. You have to eat. You might not have time, but you find the time. So you know that you need to love, because if not, you're gonna get sick. And I think that's one of the causes why so many we're having our society so sick these days. I mean, we're feeling like we're fueling our love tank with sugar and carbs and drugs and alcohol and different things. And so if people understand that what we're lacking is love, then, and it's an easy way to find love and generate it within yourself, I think that would be a major advance in our society. That's my opinion. I'm just dreaming. I'm a dreamer. Okay.
Daniel, I saw your hand up.
I really appreciate that contribution. I think that's been a really fruitful exchange and perspective. It did, however, bring to the fore for me a contrast that that I've been struggling with since we all started talking, which is there is, as you both mentioned, pretty extensive research, scientific research, medical research on certain forms of brain chemistry, oxytocin levels, and correlating these with various forms of well-being. That seems to me a distinctly scientific interrogation of this concept of love, and it seems immensely fruitful. But it does seem quite distinct from some of the other things that you were just saying, which is what can you tell your patients to do? I mean, patients who don't understand what oxytocin is or how brain chemistry works. And that seems to speak to Stefan's concern with the man on the street or the woman on the street and how to improve their lives. And it strikes me that it may not always be easy to do both the science and the helping of, John or Jane Doe in the same conference or in the same act. Furthering the science may just be a different enterprise. And so I'm still trying to figure out what our sense is of whether we're trying to do the one or the other, or whether other people don't share my concern that these two activities, these two intellectual investigations might be quite distinct. So thoughts about that?
I share your concern, and that's why I say that I was very concerned that the literature is basically showing which parts of the brain are activated by looking at the photo of a loved one, when we don't really know what relationships that are real love relationships look like, because we haven't explored them. And we need to do that in order for us to have the therapies, in order for us to model and to coach and to help people with their relationships. That's the way I view it. So I very much resonate to what you're saying.
Marina?
I think we can have research on that.
Yes. Any thoughts? Oh, you can hear us, but You have to turn on your microphone. You have that. No. Oh. She's babysitting. You're babysitting. Everybody's sleeping already. It's 4 a.m. It's 4 a.m. and everybody's in the house is sleeping. Too bad we don't know sign language, because then yeah, we could speak that way. So to me, there is a distinction between brain firing when you show pictures of loved ones, and why the brain fires. In other words, to me, oxytocin isn't love. To me, oxytocin is a product of love. So, yeah. I mean, I don't. Yes, sorry, Cecilia.
Do you think it's a product of love, or do you think that is it a necessary condition for love to develop, and then it is also then also a product of love? So it's kind of a circular process.
No,
right?
No. I think that when someone looks at a loved one, what happens is they remember all the loving things that person has been in their life. There's somebody there that they could love, which is the exhale, and who also provided love, nourishment to them. And that memory is what fires the brain. If we check their brain while they were talking to each other, kindly, respectfully, patiently, appreciatively, the same things would fire. So it is the actual, to me, it's the actual behavior and the memory of the behavior which we're noticing in the MRIs, and also when we're measuring the blood levels. So it to me, it's a product of an intentioned, conscious behavior that is nurturing, nourishing, and
but the oxytocin is not. That's the neurochemical stuff
response,
that goes on throughout the right. So it's not. So from what I'm aware of in terms of the research on in psychology on attachment, so oxytocin is created during bonding processes or bonding behavior, and it actually is what kind of is the material ground for the kind of bonding relation that is established in a loving relation can occur, right? So when mothers breastfeed their children, they release oxytocin, and the release of oxytocin helps to create the necessary kind of emotional, psychological experiences for the mother to be able to bond with the child.
Well, I think love.
think it's circular.
Yeah, I think love is an instinct that we're born with. We're you know, because it's
It's something that we start generating since the beginning when we start that bonding with mom, and definitely we know by research that if you have a healthy relationship and the child has been raised in a family where there is a loving environment, they produce more oxytocin. It's like when you work out a muscle. So it's the same thing that if you work out an area of your brain. If you receive a lot of love, and you are being raised in a family where there is a lot of love, that area of your brain is activated more often. And as it's activated, then you produce more oxytocin. So what it has been intriguing me is that oxytocin oxytocin is necessary, and intuitively I think we all know that, and we're all trying to find love because we understand that it's so important for us. Although consciously we, as we grow, we think that if we need love, we're kind of weak, so we kind of hide that, but we're always seeking for love as much as we're seeking for other things that we need to survive. So, but if we really understand how we can generate oxytocin more, and how, because even if you've been raised in a family that you didn't get too much love, or you being in love withdrawal for a long time, then we know by neuroplasticity that you can develop areas of your brain that have been weak for a while now, just by doing certain exercise, like loving. So, and the question here is, we can generate it ourselves, or we have to love or receive love and give love in order to generate oxytocin? And I think the answer is yes, both.
Is it that when we run and exercise that we actually produce oxytocin, or that we produce dopamine?
We produce dopamine, but
leads to increased serotonin and increased
and endorphins. Yeah, but what happens is that depending the way that you breathe, if you exercise and you breathe in certain ways, like meditation, you know when we call the zone, that you're on the zone, so you don't feel exercise because you're in this state. It's like meditative state, but it's active. Then you produce endorphins and you produce certain amount of oxytocin. So what I've been doing with my patients who had a hard time learning how to meditate because the monkey mind, I tell them, and they're very active, I tell them just sit after exercise and breathe in and out and try to meditate then, and it's much easier for them just because the endorphins help them, and the oxytocin, there is certain level of oxytocin that also help them, and it potentiates that oxytocin production. So that's another research I want to start, because I think that the way that we exercise is you know, there is many ways that we can improve the way that we exercise, and one of them is teaching people how to breathe, not only when we exercise, but when we're doing anything.
So are there other cases in which, or situations in which oxytocin, like what are all the situations in which oxytocin is released? Because maybe oxytocin is not, you know, if it's the case that it's released during a wide variety of circumstances and situations, I think, you know, maybe it might be better to say that oxytocin is like a stress, you know, a chemical that's released for us to reduce stress or something like that, rather than so it's involved in experiences of love, but it's not necessarily the, you know, material foundation for love, right? Because it's not associated with only loving experiences, unless you want to trivially describe every experience in which one, you know, basically treats themselves well and other people well as loving experiences, because these will be confounded with experiences that reduce stress.
There's very little research on oxytocin, actually. And there's a lot of people talking about it, but there's actually very little research. And most of it comes out of Sweden from the Uvna Smolberg lab. And the reason being that they can invasively go in and collect a lot of blood samples. And we can't do that in this country because we have very strong IRBs that say that that's an invasive procedure. So much of the research has come from there, and it's not focused on love so much. It's been focused on mother-infant interactions, and then there's research on the prairie vole that comes from Sue Porges' lab in Chicago, but to do research on humans has been really difficult. And so I don't think we have the answer, and I think we don't know whether love causes the release of oxytocin or whether oxytocin levels are higher in people who can love each other. So I think those are still very much unanswered questions.
Are they? I'm
and
sorry.
it's very hard to measure.
Are they? So how are they evasively collecting blood? And is oxytocin only detectable through blood samples?
No,
No, and in fact, there
you
is
can
some
now
studies.
collect it in saliva.
Saliva.
But
Mhm.
you're right. But the reliability assessments aren't really out there, and they have to take frequent samples, and it's just difficult research. And I just think that going with biochemistry and going with fMRIs is not going to really lead us to as many answers about how we can therapeutically help people love each other more. I think we really need to go back to behavior observations. Simply as that, and think about all the couples therapists in the world who have been observing couples and know so much. And if they could somehow document, you know, the couples who have real love and long-term love versus those that, you know, are having troubles, I just think that's where we should concentrate our efforts.
Tiffany, that's a problem.
I agree.
And the reason that's a problem is because when therapists see couples, you can imagine what the level of love is. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're coming straight from the divorce attorney. Those that are in these long-term loving relationships, therapists generally.
They're not there.
But that doesn't mean...
Well, we
No
have to invite to our
right
labs. We have to invite to our labs. People are having
Yeah.
good relationships and people are having bad relationships, and then give them the same paradigm.
Right. I mean,
You know?
that we can do. We can ask people who's been in 40-year relationships and then interview them and then, you know, work with people who fit whatever it is that we're looking for. But let's go back. I mean, this is all interesting stuff, and it's important stuff. And I think that there is no reason why we can't do research in Europe, or maybe even Sweden, or Belgium, or another country that is willing, you know, if America. And I'm thinking because what is it when they kind of pinprick the finger? I mean, that's not sufficient amount of blood to, you know, and take a little bit of sample from the finger. That's not sufficient for oxytocin measurement. You need more.
So I thought it was saliva that Tiffany said.
So she said it's not that accurate. It's not.
Okay.
No, I said it just hasn't been tested for reliability with plasma.
It's too new.
The original studies were multiple plasma assays, and you just can't do that here.
So that leaves Europe.
Yeah, we're working on a research. We're working on a research on burnout, and we're doing an intervention, and we're measuring on these people cortisol level in saliva, and because we have the saliva, we're going to be doing oxytocin in saliva. So I did a review on it, and it's still very new, but there is more and more data on oxytocin and saliva that is positive, so it might come up, and they're suggesting that it's the right way to do it. But it's just the saliva still is so controversial that it's hard. But I agree with Tiffany, what she say about that. I don't think, I brought the oxytocin because I just feel that it gets me in interest, and it gets people that think like me interest on love, because when we think on love, we think on birds and all these things. But when you realize that you can help people through these, it makes it more important. I don't know. That's the way that I think. But I do think that is behavior what we need to focus on, because it's still, as Cecilia was saying, I mean, oxytocin is there, and we think it's the love hormone, but in a few years might not be. Might be a marker of love and other things. So I do think the most important thing is that how people react and how we can generate love within people, so we can bring all the benefit that really love brings that some of them are shared by oxytocin, but it's not necessarily just oxytocin, because we know that when people really get love, the oxytocin effect potentiates. So it's really love what it matters, not oxytocin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that I think focusing on behavior is important, but I think that there's something to be said of looking at maybe a conjunction of pharmacological kind of solutions plus behavior stuff. Simply because I think that, you know, a lot of times when people have difficult relationships, there could be, right, at base, certain just neurochemical issues that one partner or both partners are experiencing, like depression, or for myself, I have attention deficit disorder, and I think my ex-husband actually had attention deficit disorder as well. And it was really, really difficult for us to actually, you know, in terms of behavior, interact in a way for us to kind of maintain a loving relationship simply because of our individual kind of psychological, neurochemical, executive control disorders, right? So I think that, you know, it's important to focus on relationships, but it is also important to focus on, you know, what it is that is necessary in terms of independent individual conditions psychologically for one to be able to put themselves into a kind of loving experience or relationship. And, you know, I brought this up in the past as well, is this idea that, you know, people being under a lot of stress. And I think that when people are under a lot of stress, not just like in terms of trauma, but simply the stress that modern life itself today just puts people in, right, which causes depression, causes feelings of, what is it, where you feel kind of apathy, so on, that, and just exhaustion. It makes it very, very difficult for people to enter into loving relationships or have loving behaviors towards other people.
One of the things that I would say about that, so I've been working with couples and very successfully for 20 plus years. So one of the things, kind of getting back to the behavior, is I show people two lists: loving behaviors, unloving behaviors, respect, disrespect, patience, impatience, appreciation, unappreciated, etc., etc. And trying to make them aware of their behaviors. And my experience with couples is that when they start to become aware of their unloving behaviors, and thereby behave more lovingly, more patiently, with more appreciation, more kindness, thoughtfulness, all of those things. They put these lists up on their refrigerators. They start to feel like they're being loved more and that they're able to be loved more. So there's a level of awareness and a level of behavior. It seems like that when you become aware of your behavior and you start behaving in what I call loving ways versus unloving ways, that people's experience begins to change.
Yeah, but I think my concern here, right, is with, you know, what would happen if you had a couple who came in, and let's say that one of the individuals had ADD, or one of the individuals was autistic, and the couple just never
so
knew.
We can always,
that
Cecilia, please forgive me. I'm going to cut you short because for everything there are exceptions. For everything, and so we can't, I don't think we will ever have a theory that will answer every single exception, exception. I mean, there are people in the world that are born literally with two heads. Two heads, they're of two different minds. So how do we, there are some things that in terms of our inquiry, I think we just need to kind of keep it basic and simple, because I think that's hard enough. And if we go off on particular examples, then I think we're not going to even get to the basic general question that maybe could help 70-80% of the people, and maybe not the other 10-20%.
Well, here's the thing, though, right, Stefan, is that the idea here, I thought, was to have a theory or a paradigm in order to help, especially in situations where couples need therapy. And if you think about it, if that's the case, then what we're actually going to be
I don't think we're talking about couples that need therapy. I think we're talking about the average person on the street, because I think the average person on the street wants love, needs love, and very few people will say, I have so much love in my life, I don't need or want any more love. That I think would be, the exception. For most people, yes, there is some love in their life. Some relationships are a little better than others, but in general, they all could be better. They all could be richer, especially people loving themselves.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? I think that if you're dealing with those individuals who are quote-unquote normal, who, like, I'm not even sure how one would define normal, but that's fine. That's important. I think that's very important. But then I think that it has to be acknowledged that this paradigm that, you want to promote is actually not, speaking to a very large population of individuals who might be, especially for those who are clinical psychologists and therapists, especially those subjects of interest, right? That those clinical therapists and psychologists and counselors want to help and work with in order to figure out how they can also be involved in loving relationships. So I think it's that, what you want to do is important, but I think it does need to be acknowledged that there are individuals that, who are autistic maybe, or who have ADD, or who have depression, who can still be in loving relationships. And the question is how to kind of get them to understand what a loving relationship is for them, and how their partners can understand this as well.
But that's not where we're starting, right? That's maybe where we're finished once we answer the basic questions. Because to me I
didn't know that we were at a certain point. So if we're starting at the beginning,
we don't even know what love is. We haven't answered what love is. So what love is for the average person. Yes, Daniel.
Well, so this is not a theoretical contribution to the conversation. It's rather a self-centered and practical one, because I'm not crazy about getting up in front of a lot of people to talk. So I like to know exactly what I'm doing, who I'm talking to, how I'm meant to talk to them, so a kind of genre constraint, like how many syllables can be in my words, that sort of thing. And then what I'm trying to achieve by talking. Am I trying to just inform them of something? Am I trying to, elicit, am I really trying to form a lynch mob? What's my further goal? So I'm really asking myself questions about who's going to be in the audience, who is, as it were, the implied audience, even if, we happen only to be speaking to colleagues just by chance of who attends. are we implicitly trying to give content that is, as it were, catered to the man on the street, or are we talking to scientists as scientists, or what are we doing? And I still don't feel like I've achieved a great deal of clarity about those things, and I think part of some of those issues are coming up in in the previous discussion. Should I be talking to academic and fairly I don't know, professionals in what's called the knowledge industry, or am I talking to the man on the street?
More so. That, I mean, we're not excluding the public, so to speak, or people who are interested, who are maybe coaches and whatever. We're not excluding, but I think academic primarily. But really, what we're doing is we're talking to each other. We're talking to each other. They're kind of listening in, and then, you know, we'll get some feedback. But we're primarily talking to each other because they haven't been privy to this whole process. So for a lot of people,
okay, what's our goal in talking to one another? I mean, are we trying to arrive at a definition, or a mutually
what is
agreed
love? We're trying to figure out. Yeah, we're trying to figure out what is love. We're trying to figure out what is this, because once we figure out what it is, then a lot of the questions that have come back, that, you know, basic questions, we are going to be able to answer. You know, once we know what, then we can explain why, and we can give people the hows and different tools, and people who are autistic or ADD will be like different tools, and maybe even a different way of explaining. But we need to know. There are people who need to know what love is.
Okay, so the concern for the person on the street and the varieties of types of person on the street and the varieties of issues that they may be coping with or trying to negotiate, that is a goal, but it's fairly downstream.
Yes, exactly.
From what we're actually going to be talking about.
Exactly.
I see.
It's
all right, that's very helpful.
Yeah, downstream.
Well, I think with the way we've been talking tonight has been pretty clear and pretty basic. I don't know that people wouldn't understand what we're talking about. We might have to tell them if we're talking about oxytocin what it is, but
Right.
I feel like our conversations have been good and have been down to earth, and you know, Stefan kept reminding us we need to be more functional, and so that's good. Yeah, so I think we'll be okay.
Yeah,
I don't think you need to be nervous about it, Daniel.
Well, I don't need to be, but I'm going to be anyway. There's not much I can do.
Oh yeah. Well,
Except
you know what? If you're not nervous, then you're not going to do very well anyway.
So,
you know, you also need a little nervousness.
Yeah.
Tiffany saying nervousness helps us do better.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify the type of speech act I would be performing, whether I would be recommending a course of action for someone who wanted to improve their love life in the broadest sense of the term.
Got it.
Or whether...
Yeah, it's more of a philosophical discussion than giving advice. At this point, we're not giving people advice. We're talking amongst ourselves. People are listening in. You know, live streaming. You're going to get all kinds of people listening to us. By the way, you know, as a philosopher, you, Agnieszka, Cecilia, there is also, and I want you to feel completely comfortable taking this position where what you're doing is you're listening in, and instead of necessarily worrying about your presentation, focusing more on what people are saying to each other, and looking for the commonality, looking for something that doesn't follow X, doesn't follow Y. You know, this has been brought up in a couple of places, and especially with Agnieszka, where you know what would be sufficient and necessary for us to call something love? What would need to be present? You know, is it a level of oxytocin? Is it a level of response? Is it the intentionality we bring to it, the awareness we bring to it? Is it a feeling? You know, this has been brought up. I think Tiffany brought it up. Here, let me see if I can. Yeah, what physical feeling do people have with love? You know, for me, I feel warm. You know, when people behave nicely, when I get a smile, when somebody opens the door, when somebody is supportive and patient with me, or whatever it is, I feel it, I sense it. It really warms and energizes me. For maybe other people, there's other sensations, but I've gotten that over more than 20 years, kind of replicated. Well, how does it feel? Where in your body do you feel it? You know, for a lot of people, everywhere. And how does it feel? It feels good. You know, a lot of people say good. So, you know, what does good mean? Good is a good enough word. You know, if when people behave nicely, we feel good, then the only question is nicely what we mean by loving, and is good what we mean by warm and energized. And I think that we can, and I don't mean dumb it down, but we can make it as basic as that, and say that when people behave nicely, we are able to sense it. It makes us feel good. It, you know, and then we can add the science to it, because when we behave that way, Gene Watson's science shows that it actually heals. When nurses act kinder and more compassionate and loving and caring with their patients, the patients heal faster, and the nurses actually are healthier instead of more tired because they tried so hard to be nice. It actually energizes the giver. Now, is caring the same as love? I think that's one of the things that from a linguistic point of view, you know, see, maybe we can agree that all these different terms that the Eskimos have for snow, but they're all snow. Basically, it's snow. It's crystallized water. They need to know the different definitions, because the way they wax the skis, if you use the wrong wax, you die out in the wilderness because you get stuck. So there is an importance of knowing specifically what kind of snow, but generally it's snowing. And to me, the analogy of food is similar. You know, 10,000 years ago, people didn't know and didn't categorize vitamins and minerals and carbohydrates and all this stuff, but they knew they needed food, they needed nourishment. And that's why the question, do people need love? And we need to, why? If the answer is yes, people need love, then don't we have to answer why? It's not because the brain is firing. We seem to have a need that's not that different. You know, I saw an Oprah, I don't know, 10 years ago, and she kind of said, well, oh, you know, people need love like air. And I said to her, yes. It wasn't, I talk to the television a lot, but so yeah.
That's funny.
So what is love? Why do we need it? When we say we can give it, really, I don't see anything, but the other person feels something. What do they feel? They feel good. So does that mean we're giving something? And the key word is thing. Because if we're not giving something, how could they feel nothing? How can people feel nothing? How can we have no experience when in fact we do have a very visceral physical experience? So are we generating something that is not measurable yet? 100 years ago we couldn't measure sound waves, but we heard the sound. It was clear experience. We feel the love. It's a clear experience. What do we attribute it to? Why are we all have this very common experience? When people don't behave nicely with us, kind of, makes us sad, hurts, painful. And I think we're okay if we start with the basics. You know, one of the things that happened with food, and tell me what you think about this analogy. One of the things that happened with food is that the only word people had was food. It was food. You could eat it. I mean, you could call it names. It's a berry or it's a whatever. But, you know, we called it food. And what has happened with food is we've become more and more sophisticated because we knew that what it was nourishment that we needed. So, and then we categorized it, grain and dairy and meat and fruit and vegetable, you know. Then we became even more sophisticated and we broke that down into minerals and vitamins and all different kinds of things. With love, we never knew what love was. We never knew what love was. So we made up all of these categories, and now our job is to kind of work backwards to kind of figure out, well, so why do we need it? And what do we mean that we can give it? What are we giving? I don't see anything. Just an experience. I'm sorry, somebody was saying something.
That was me. That was me. Sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
But so I think it's interesting, this idea that you have in terms of these various the varieties of labels or terms that we have. And I'm wondering if anybody in the panel is going to talk about cross-cultural studies of what love is, or are we just speaking to people who are, you know, from the United States who are culturally U.S.?
I don't think we have to worry about that. I think if somebody has something to say about love and you think it's integral to this conversation, it's going to move the conversation forward. What is love? I think we can talk about whatever. Okay. I don't know if the people, I don't know if the other people on the panel are knowledgeable enough about, let's say, certain things to actually respond. So I'm not sure how much give and take there will be if we're finding ourselves. But even here, we're presenting things that some people are very familiar with and other people may be much less familiar, and makes it more difficult. That's why we're saying we're constantly learning from each other. So this is as much of, we're giving a talk about our idea as that we're listening to everybody else's ideas. And that listening part is very important.
Yeah. So I think, you know, it would be nice if someone is able to, or if people in general are able to maybe address some kind of different cultural concept, or how different cultures share the same kind of understanding fundamentally of what love might be. This might be something interesting to bring out as well, especially if it's the case that what we really want to do at the symposium is to provide a unified theory of what love is. And that entails one that is a universal theory of what love is, not just a theory of American love or U.S. love that we're going to impose on other cultures.
I'm from Hungary, Marina is from Belgium, Ivella's from Venezuela. So, you know, right there, we already, you know, multicultural, whatever you want to call it, coming from different parts of the world, different countries. It's again.
I mean, it's partly a geographical issue, but it's also a historical issue. I take the point very seriously. I think, particularly if we're ultimately oriented towards the person on the street, it matters very much what that street is called and when they're walking down it.
I agree, and I hear what you're saying.
That the sameness of a word used over millennia indicates that the phenomenon it signifies at various times is necessarily the same or has an essence. So my tendency is towards pluralism with a hope of unification, but yeah, I would love it if someone had something to contribute about non-contemporary or non-Western notions of love and how they differ and
I haven't
what
heard.
might be.
I haven't
Yeah.
heard in talking to the panel, I haven't heard anybody bring that up in a knowledgeable way. So to introduce something that nobody's really an expert in and none of us can respond to, that would be a concern
Oh,
because, yeah.
sure. I wasn't trying to say we need to cover everything. I think that's impossible, and it would be foolhardy to try. I was just indicating that it might be well to be a little conscious of how circumscribed our target is, which is not to say we need to speak to everything that's gone by the name of love anywhere ever. It's just to say that a consciousness of the diversity of things that deservedly go by that name is perhaps good to keep in mind.
I think it's a very good point Cecilia made. I think it's good that you underlined it. All the people who are talking about when is the next symposium, and so one of the things about the next symposium may be, and working towards it, may be to broaden the horizons and make it more inclusive, and see where the conversation goes. If and ask people who have real expertise in these areas to please join the community and let us hear their voice and contribute their knowledge, because yes, we are looking for something that is useful globally. Yes, we are, not just something that's maybe Western Europe or you know.
Well, one study I know about is that Helen Fisher, one of her early studies when she was sending out her questionnaire to Japanese students and American students, and she found very, very few cultural differences between the Japanese and the Americans. She found very few differences gender-wise, and she found very few differences between heterosexual and homosexual couples. And it goes on and on like that. And so, you know, I haven't seen any other cross-cultural studies like that, but from that study, it made me think that it is universal, that there really aren't that many differences by any kind of demographic descriptor. And I don't know.
Yeah, I would think biologically, we all need air, food, and water. You know, I mean, no matter how we cook it and, and slice it and dice it, and I don't, and from that kind of biological point of view, I think that everyone needs love. I think that's the way human beings are born, and I think the instinct is. Now, cultural things might make a difference. I know when my book was translated into Chinese by a group of 5 individuals, one of the things that came up is how much they thought the book was needed in China because of the lack of even some of the words that we use that are not being used there. So yeah, I mean, I think that who we are biologically, I think, is the same around the globe, 7 billion, and then what becomes because of the way we're raised and the cultural definitions and etc. I think that they may make a difference, and it will be good to although there you are, Tiffany, you know, in terms of Japanese and American. So, yep.
Okay, sounds good. Well, so in terms of the presentation, is it the case that people are going to, so I know that there are, you know, some of us, so the philosophers kind of have a certain understanding, I think, of what love is, that we're all kind of aware of what the background for these understandings are, and then the clinicians have a certain understanding which seems to kind of unite them together, and then the psychologists seem to have an understanding as well that kind of unites them. And I'm wondering whether or not, if all of us are going to be giving a short talk, if it's the case that each of us are going to bring in a perspective that is, or going to try to bring in a perspective that's different from what another person in our similar group will be, or if we're going to be trying to bring in a perspective on something that is the same. So, like, what I think I would find interesting is, like, among the clinicians, among those who understand love to be a kind of force or energy, if each person is able to address in somewhat of a detailed way how this kind of understanding of love can be elaborated on, right? So would that be possible, or is everyone?
I don't think that there is enough contact among or even groups defined, and even enough time for people to discuss and then take different approaches, and within a particular group. I think that the best I think we can do is everybody get their paper in by the 19th, so I can forward everything to you, Cecilia, which we spoke about at the beginning, and based on that, you and I will go over and try to see, morning presenters and evening presenters, so there's some flow, and there might be some overlap. Or maybe what we'll do is, instead of having people talk in a group, although I think that would be group, if there's some redundancy, it will just underline. I think everybody will talk, and say things their own unique way. But if there is, again, if there's similarities, it will underline that, there are some people who think of things a certain way and another way, and that will be taken into consideration when we break into the three groups, and each group tries to come up with their definition, and then we come together again, and then we'll look at those three definitions that the groups came up with, and see if we can come to some kind of agreement that everybody, the panel, feels comfortable. We're not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Okay. So another question I guess is, I'm still kind of wondering how the relationship between the panel talk and then the breakout groups are going to work, because it seems like, what we're planning, all of us as panelists, is kind of a talk on our own understanding of what love is, which may contribute to a unified theory of love. And what I wanted to do actually for my presentation, which I wanted to put at the end, is to give a way of understanding how all of everybody's presentations could be related into a kind of a pluralistic unified account already. And so then it's like these presentations are going to happen throughout the day, and then are the breakout sessions going to happen in between the presentations, or after each presentation?
Right. After we heard everyone's, and after we had a chance to discuss everyone's, and where everybody who spoke got some feedback, and people had a chance to think about it, or say something about it, or ask a question or something like that. After that, there will be the breakout sessions, and at the end we'll come together for about an hour and see if we can put together, this is where the facilitator comes in, put together based on what we're hearing from the three people that will be elected to represent their group, and see if we can come together and then take a final vote. All the A's say yes, and all the nays say no.
Okay, so all the talks now are going to be given, the panel talks are going to be given during the first half? Because I thought the original set was split them.
Half of them are going to be first half, half of them
Okay.
second half, and then the last 2 hours we're going to spend 1 hour in groups and 1 hour finally together.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, okay. And then the idea is that during the, so there's going to be, in the breakout sessions, there are going to be 3 groups, or how many, what are the total number?
Probably 3. We'll have to see how many people there are, you know,
Okay.
all together, but I would say maybe 3. It would be interesting to get 3 different takes and then try to use, you know, that instead of, let's say, just 2. I don't think 4 becomes too many to at the end try to do anything with.
So, and then the panelists are going to be split up into even
3
numbers
groups.
within each group?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then I guess in terms of the number of people there, do you have any idea of how many tickets have sold so far, or so that we kind of get an idea of what we have
we
so
haven't
far?
had that many ticket sales, and we're working on that at this point. We're also giving away some scholarship tickets to graduate students, and
great.
so we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Like I said, initially the whole idea was that it was going to be a round table. In other words, it was going to be however many academicians sitting around a table and having the conversation based on some of this work that we have done in preparation, which will also continue on Saturday. We'll have 4 hours together. By the way, found a delicious restaurant, and it's right in the same building that it's Bohemian, it's Czech food, it's super, and so we will have a chance to actually work together, and then on Sunday we'll have people who will ask some questions and give us further feedback.
Okay.
Yes, Danny.
I have to interject just because I have to go, but
Yes.
thank you all. I feel like I've got a much greater sense of orientation now.
Oh,
so
good.
I look forward to reading everybody's contributions, and will send something of my own that's quite different from what I sent Stefan today.
It's okay. It's by the 19th, Cecilia asked, you know, for everybody to kind of have, yeah, by the 19th,
yeah,
so that she can start working on it and stuff like that. Actually, anybody have anything else? Let's final questions. We know that we have one silent partner here. We don't want to forget about you, Marina. I'm sorry that you didn't have a chance, and I don't know to what degree we answered, but these are the answers. One of the things, let me just answer your thing about when your whole heart is crying. You know, how do we do it? You know, besides doing it. Well, and this is my own philosophy. So this is not the group's philosophy. This is not what love is, but just from my own personal philosophy, which I think most of you have heard because I've spoken to everybody, at least initially, and since then more than once. So if you think of love as air, then it becomes very clear that you not only need to breathe in for your own health, but you need to breathe out for your own health, so that when you want to love, when you say what blocks it, again, we can point to things like fear or whatever, but the good news is that no one can stop you from loving. No one can ever stop you from loving. And it is the healthiest thing you can do. So when you feel like being loving, you love. That love gets rejected, that's someone else's responsibility. But when you don't love because you know it's going to be rejected, then it hurts twice. It hurts because you don't love, and you hurt, you know. But when you don't give love, you already know that you're being rejected. So it's twice as unhealthy. And when people see that you love and that you love them authentically, that there isn't an agenda behind this loving. It's genuine. It's not holding anybody to blame. Then eventually love conquers all. Eventually, because people need nourishment, and when they get it from you, in spite of their unloving and rejection, they will realize that this is who you are, the love is genuine, they feel it, and it kind of wins the day. That has been my experience, that it wins the day. So don't let anybody block that stream when your whole heart is crying out in order to do it. Just 2 barrels. Let them have it with 2 barrels.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Wait, I have.
That's wonderful.
Danielle, if you need to leave, just feel free.
Sorry,
So I'm
yeah.
wondering whether or not.
Bye.
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 I'm wondering if is it possible that so this idea of sincerity regarding love. So most people, right, think of insincere love to be manipulative, kind of malformed, abusive type of love, maybe, where you one does not really love the other person or people, but they pretend to. And but I'm wondering whether or not there's another kind of I don't know if you say it's an insincere kind of love, because it's a kind of love, let's say, that one would have if they were maybe in a arranged marriage, right? So they were, the tradition in their culture is that the parents arrange their marriage with another person, and what they do is, so this is kind of like Fiddler on the Roof thing, where, the parents learn to love each other, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, they weren't initially, people don't initially have a, like what most people in the U.S., right, might think of like an idealized love at first sight kind of feeling towards this other person. But because for cultural reasons or something like that, there's and maybe a very intellectual kind of reason, there's a way in which they understand their relationship to be a love relationship, so that they act in such a way to become in love with each other. So it's like they have love, but they act in such a way so that they end up being in love. Like, would you say that this is an insincere kind of, like, how would you describe or understand this kind of relationship?
I think what you're talking about is a cultural situation that the 2 young people accept. There isn't that attraction that usually brings people together, which is not always the worst thing. And if they behave what I would call lovingly, meaning that they're respectful with each other, they're kind with each other, they're thoughtful with each other, they're supportive with each other, they appreciate each other, just normal behaviors, things that we would think we teach and we expect a human being, and it's much easier said than done. But if people behave that way, they're actually nurturing each other. They're actually loving each other. And over time, this is really what people need. And when people don't get this, all the people who get together because they're attracted get divorced. Because the reason we get married, from my perspective, is that we need that nourishment. And since infancy, we haven't gotten it. We've gotten it conditionally. And when we meet someone, we confuse the attraction, the adrenaline and dopamine and all that stuff. We confuse it with love. It's a very strong energy. But at the same time, we behave so nicely with each other because we want that dopamine, adrenaline rush, the pheromones, that we also are nurturing the other person. So then we get married because now we have both. We have the nurturing and the sexual attraction. But after marriage, we stop working so hard at the relationship. We're not as respectful. We're not as patient. We're not as thoughtful. We're not as supportive. We're not as appreciative as the other person needs, because remember, people don't love themselves, so they need other people. And then it starts to feel like, well, that you don't love me anymore. Well, I love you, I'm here, but you're not doing all the things that I need, which is what you were doing when we were dating, and which you were doing for a little bit while we were engaged and married. So the example you brought up, those people can actually fall in love because they behave lovingly with each other, and that's basically my work. My work, the first thing I say, there's no such a thing as falling in love or out of love. You either behave lovingly or you don't behave lovingly. And what has happened is that the way you behaved when you met, you stopped because you didn't realize you were hurting the other person, that they needed the nourishment that you're giving them. They're dependent on it. They don't know how to love themselves. So let's see what happens when you start to behave that way and you start giving the other person nourishment, and at the same time start nourishing yourself. You know, there's something we call self-talk, and the way we treat ourselves is very unloving. So because we treat ourselves very unloving, we need other people to be loving with us even more. Even more. You know, you heard the term, you know, we're our worst enemy. Well, in a sense, when it comes to love, if it is a nourishment, which is what Barbara Fredrickson's research showed, but I mean, I believe, and it was my hypothesis. Yeah, so those people, I'm sorry, getting back to your thing, yes, that is real love, because they're giving each other real nourishment. And eventually, that is what creates long-term relationships. When that is not present, then what you have is a lot of resentment. You have a high divorce rate. You know, in the second marriages, 80% divorce rate. Why? Because people find the attraction again, you know, in the second marriage, but they stop trying much, much sooner. That whole period of honeymoon and everything is much shorter. So when people find that they don't the other person doesn't behave, you know, that lovingly, that it doesn't, you know, they just don't want to try, then that's it. They just say, no, it's enough. So second marriage is 80% divorce rate. First marriage, 50%. Yeah. And
Wow,
the people,
that's amazing.
yeah, and the
I
people
wish
who,
the
yeah,
second time around people would have learned what
no.
not to do.
No,
Wow,
people don't learn because
that's
it wasn't
amazing.
their fault, it was the other person's fault. So if you find
Oh
the right
God.
person, and when you find another person and you're all attracted and they're very nice, remember, if you want to be with a person, you have to be very nice to them, but not after marriage. After marriage, you don't have to be very nice anymore. So it's very unconscious because we don't think of love. We don't know what love is. We don't think of love as nourishment. That's my particular theory. We don't think of it that way. So we don't think that when we don't behave lovingly, that it actually deprives the other person of an essential nourishment.
Yeah.
Why are we so desperate for love? Why? What is love that we're so desperate for it? We know why we're so desperate for air. If somebody was choking us, we would know why we would scratch their eyes out, you know, because we desperately need air. But we also desperately need love. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I think you're right on, Stefan. And I think the statistics show that those prearranged marriages do quite well because people really work at it because they're stuck. They can't go anywhere.
Right.
And culturally and familially, you know, they have to be in that relationship. So they work on it, and it works out okay, even though they didn't have an initial attraction.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I think you're right on. But I think that has to be part of this symposium. And you said, oh, we have to really define it. We have to really define it. Well, I think you have really defined it. And a lot of what you're saying is going to be therapeutically just right on for people, you know, especially if we get people like coaches and life coaches and people in the audience. I don't think we can go talking about love without talking about what you just said, you know, that this is what you need to do in therapy. You need to talk to people about all of these ingredients that need to be there. And most people don't think about that, you know. I need to respect you. I need to, all the things you said.
Yeah. Well, it's 30 years of work, but I want to know what I don't know. I'm that kind of person, and I know that my ideas work because I have the results. But I would like to see, I think we need a science of love. We need that research. The pieces that you were talking about, I think, are so important. I think that research and whatever we come up with will be the thing that will make people pay attention, that will make Oprah want to, put our book on her book club or something like that, and people listen. Then we need to get people's ear. And I think when the answers come from a community that has worked together for a couple of years and has come to an understanding and come to an agreement and is doing research, I think that community becomes a powerhouse. And a powerhouse for good is, I think, what the world needs. So I've done my thing, and I'm ready to be part of a community and give up whatever I need to that is not as useful or helpful, and incorporate what it is, and move forward really as a community, that serves humanity. I've served myself. It's enough.
That's so cool.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, you mentioned, Stefan, that there was going to be live streaming. Where
Yes.
is the live streaming going to be presented?
It's all over the world. When people go to our website and register, it's free. So they just have to go to the website. Everybody who registers on the website will be sent a link, and they can just, that day they can tune in and listen to their heart's content to the process.
Okay,
the only thing is they won't be able to. So yeah, if you part of, again, association or whatever, worldwide, you can let everyone in your community, in your association, family, anybody who wants to listen.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that is so exciting. I mean.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Would the live streaming also be able, will that be recorded as well and released on like YouTube or something? Okay.
Yeah, that will be recorded. Yeah, so I mean, if somebody misses, it will be accessible, as well as the documentary that we're working on, which will be edited more tightly and will include other things, including some man on the street conversations around the world.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I think we're getting there. I mean, it's I'm very honored and surprised at your persistence. The people on the panel. So it's incredible. All right.
Yeah, I think the group of people involved are pretty cool, and I'm excited to see everybody's presentations and learn a lot from them.
Yeah, that's it. We are going to be the experts in love because we've taken the time to talk to each other and learn from each other. So, all righty.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm looking forward, Tiffany. I'm looking forward to, and I don't know who else, Marina, I don't know what your schedule is, but I would love to also spend a little time with people if you're here, unless you're rushing back. So let me know your schedule. Tiffany would like to set up something on Monday. Yeah, we just have to figure out the time and where and stuff like that. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Marina, with a smiling face. It was so nice to look at you, but I felt so bad. I would have loved to hear you, but hopefully I answered, maybe that one question. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. All right.